Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update from RAU'S IAS. Do not forget to subscribe to our Telegram channel for all the updates and materials.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday edition of Daily News Simplified, where along with the Hindu of Sunday, we take up Indian Express Explained section of the preceding week. The articles that we are going to take up today have been displayed on the screen. Let us now begin the discussion. Atmanirbhar in defense production, where India stands among Indo-Pacific nations, has appeared in the Indian Express Explained section this week. So India has ranked 4th among 12 Indo-Pacific nations in self-reliant arms production capabilities, and this has been stated in a report by Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. The study, which measures self-reliance until 2020, is based on 3 indicators of self-reliance in each country: arms procurement, which means imports, licensed and domestic production as a proportion of the government's total procurement of major conventional arms industry, which ranks the country by sales of arms and military services in 2020 to both domestic as well as export customers, and uncrewed maritime vehicles, the sea equivalents of drones, covering both uncrewed surface vehicles and uncrewed underwater vehicles, which are obviously meant to provide a qualitative understanding of how countries are engaging domestic research institutes and firms to provide and produce such cutting-edge systems. And so, as you can see on your screen, armed exports and imports, military spending in Indo-Pacific region. But this indigenization of technology and how India stands in the Indo-Pacific is not so much of concern, as is absolute indigenization of technology within India.
So we are going to begin the analysis by first understanding the mapping of this particular topic with the UPSC syllabus. And as you can see, achievement of Indians in science and technology, indigenization of technology and developing new technology is a part of your syllabus in GS paper 3. And so in this regard, we are going to discuss 4 key things. Why there is a need for indigenization, what are the issues with indigenization, what are the steps that have been taken for indigenization, and the draft defense and export promotion policy which was released just last year. And so let us now begin the discussion by first understanding why is there a need to indigenize, and this goes for any technology, this goes for any sector, but specifically for the defense sector. Why indigenization of defense technology is absolutely important for maintaining India's integrity and sovereignty. Starting with India's second largest arm importer. If you take all the countries which import arms and ammunition from foreign countries, India stands second in the list. So, very valuable foreign exchange reserve has to be divested, has to be spent while acquiring these arms and ammunition. Apart from running down our foreign exchange reserve, it also impacts our trade deficit. So by possessing a sound defense sector indigenously, India can not only reduce its dependence on foreign imports, but also it gives us an opportunity to convert this trade deficit into surplus. So this is just economy, but it also has a strategic point of view. It also has a security implications. By not possessing domestic capability to produce arms and ammunition makes India perpetually dependent on other countries. Because once you start importing a lot of arms and ammunition from foreign countries, first, it does not give you an opportunity to develop your own domestic base, and second, you are perpetually dependent for their parts, for their servicing, for their maintenance on the source countries. And this subjects India to a lot of strategic constraints. So for example, if you have imported significant amount of fighter jets from France, it is mandatory for India now to maintain cordial relation with France. Because if tomorrow France says that we are not going to service our Rafale jets, then India cannot do anything because there is no other supplier of the parts of this very specific and specialized fighter jet. Apart from that, having a domestic capability to develop such a high-tech machinery is going to employ a lot of people, not just in primary but secondary at tertiary level as well. And it will definitely lead to overall industrial growth. Because you need to understand the concept of propulsive industry, and defense sector is a propulsive industry. So it's just not like a very minor industry which is going to serve its own purpose. Once a defense project is established, a lot of other industries are needed to support or to cater to the defense industry, and hence it has a multiplier effect. So propulsive industries are those which lead to generation of subsidiary industries along or around their areas. So you can understand that having a sound domestic base of manufacturing in defense technology is not only important for economic purposes but also very crucial for India's strategic independence or autonomy. Because then Indian foreign policies would not be contingent upon the policies of major developed countries. So for example, right now, West is in fight or in war with Russia, not directly but indirectly. Now India imports arms not just from Russia but also from US and France, which is stopping India from taking any sides in this particular conflict. For example, in last 3 to 4 years, India is having a very hard time in convincing USA that import of S-400 missile defense systems from Russia should not be put under sanction list of America. So these kinds of problems shall not arise if India has defense domestic production or sound domestic defense manufacturing capabilities. So before going forward, let us now first understand what are the pillars of defense capabilities. So you need to understand that there are 4 stakeholders to defense manufacturing ecosystem. The first one is the end user, which is the overall purpose of designing a defense equipment, which are armed forces. They are the people who are ultimately going to use these weapons. Then next comes designing, which is the conceptualization of the weapons, for which we have DRDO. Then after an equipment has been designed or conceptualized, that design once approved is handed over to the manufacturer or the makers, which are basically either public sector undertaking companies or the private sector undertakings. And then last but not the least, pillar of defense capability is academia, where all the frontline research goes on. If we talk about the 4 components, the last one, which is academia, is the weakest link in our country because the human resource capabilities in developed countries which deal with the cutting edge research is generally located in top institutions like Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Caltech, whereas in our country, the cutting edge research is right now going on in DRDO and ISRO and not in our universities and institutes. So what are the challenges which India's defense manufacturing capabilities are facing? The first and foremost is the massive delays in not just the designing and manufacturing, but also in the acquisition processes. And the main reason behind that is the functioning of armed forces, which are the users, the designers, which is DRDO, and the makers, which are PSUs, work in silos. There is hardly any interaction or collaboration, so to say, in between or among these 4 pillars. And because of this, when a need is felt by an armed forces or component of armed forces about a new equipment or a weapon or a technology, it is usually 5 to 10 years of delay when that need is communicated to DRDO. Then DRDO comes up with a design which is then delayed by almost 5 to 7 years in communication to PSUs. And so you can see once a need is felt at the ground level in border areas, it is already 20-25 years time when the weapon is made by the public sector undertakings. When we talk about delay in the designing and in the making stage, we can clearly see that defense technology in India is public sector driven. And so all the issues which plague public sector undertakings in all the sectors in our country also plagues the defense sector as well. Now, because of the government policies, there is still no liberalization in defense manufacturing, because of which all the major players are public sector undertakings, which then clearly reflects in either the final product being substandard or extremely delayed, which then renders it useless for the army, because by that time the government of India has already gone ahead and acquired a foreign made equipment or a weapon serving the same purpose for which the research was undertaken. Then comes the issue of lack of critical technology. And this is mainly because of lack of funds as well as lack of requisite skills in the human resource in our country. And that is mainly because of the neglected 4th pillar of our ecosystem, which is academia. Our premier institutes in technology, for example IITs and NITs, do not have a separate stream specializing in defense technology. Even the funding of the government when it comes to designing of new technology is minimal. Then there are other issues as well. For example, long gestation period. As all of us can easily understand that these technology require a lot of time to be actually effectual on ground. And as we have discussed, armed forces usually run out of patience because ultimately they are the one who are going to defend our borders and us. And so they push the government to acquire foreign made goods, which then finally scuttles the defense development program of that particular weapon in our country. And then finally, we have a lot of land acquisition issues, just like all other fields, which have led to delay in a lot of defense development projects in our country. But it's not like government has not taken any initiative or step in this regard. We have a Department of Defense Production in Ministry of Defense taking care of production and designing of new weapons, which manages and runs the ordnance factories, which manufacture a lot of arms, and especially the minor arms, but which are mainly on the basis of technology transfer, where an original patent holder of a foreign weapon leases out licenses to manufacture a particular arm to various companies across the world. So it's not like a development of new technology, but production based on already existing technology purchased on license from a foreign vendor. Then we have a lot of defense PSUs, for example, HAL, MDSL. Also recently, government has started issuing licenses to the private sector players for the production of minor arms. So this is mainly as far as the production is concerned. What about designing? And for that, we already have DRDO, which is the prime agency responsible for designing and development of state-of-the-art defense technology, and one of the few most significant and successful technologies developed by our DRDO are Prithvi Missile, Agni Missile and Tejas. Then this is not just it. Indian Armed Forces have their in-house design team and the wings, which parallelly run the program of designing of new weapons. Because ultimately they are the ones who are going to use it, and so they are the most well-placed agencies to understand their own needs and come up with some very rough draft or a very initial basic design which can then be communicated to DRDO for further development. Then in 2020, government notified defense procurement procedure, which came up with a lot of categories of defense equipments. For example, made in India, built in India, designed in India. And depending upon the percentage of indigenization, the government gives preference in the acquisition process. Then the government has also come up with a lot of schemes, for example, Make in India, Startup India, IDEX. Then recently, Government of India has also launched this scheme of defense corridors. For example, the latest one being, or the only two being, located in Tamil Nadu and another one located in Uttar Pradesh. So the draft Defense Procurement Policy 2020 is the latest document of the Government of India. It is important for us to have a look at that. It aims to achieve a turnover of rupees 1,75,000 crore or $25 billion, including export of around 35,000 crore in aerospace and defense goods and services by 2025. It intends to develop a dynamic, robust and competitive defense industry, including aerospace and naval shipbuilding industry, to cater to the needs of armed forces with quality products. It also intends to reduce dependence on imports and take forward Make in India initiatives through domestic design and development. At the same time, it aims to promote export of defense products and become a part of global defense value chains. And finally, it will aim to create an environment that encourages research and development, rewards innovation, creates Indian intellectual property ownerships, and promote a robust and self-reliant defense industry. So how does it wants or intends to achieve all of this, which we have discussed in the previous slide? So the draft policy clearly lists down 6 major areas of action. For example, procurement reforms, support to MSMEs and startups, optimizing resource allocation, investment promotion, innovation and R&D, and focusing on DPSUs and Ordnance Factory Board. So let us now begin with procurement reforms. Now we understand that procurement is completely and totally in the hands of the government. And so the government has proposed to publish a negative list. Now what does this mean? So negative list is a list of equipment, and if a particular equipment finds its place in the negative list, it cannot be imported, but only domestically manufactured. And so what government has done is that it has laid out a plan of yearly increasing negative list. So for example, let's say that the government notifies the negative list for 2024 and helicopter is there in 2024, which will mean that 2024 onwards, helicopters cannot be imported in India. It can only be manufactured in India and then acquired by the government of India. This will not only boost domestic manufacturing but will also act as an assurance to domestic manufacturers who will be assured that there would be a market, and government is the biggest market one can have, for the production that they are going to now conduct. And so, if the government releases an advanced negative list, the people who are interested in defense technology can look at that list and start their research and development, start their designing, start their production, anticipating the procurement of these items from the government. Because now they don't have to fight or compete against the foreign vendors. All they have to do is to be better than the other domestic players. And the government has specifically mentioned in the draft policy that this list will progressively become longer and longer, which is a great news. At the same time, government also realizes that defense manufacturing and production is a highly specialized and skilled job, which requires a priori estimation of the development times and production lead times, which is basically the minimum amount of leverage in terms of time an agency needs to be able to successfully develop a weapon or an equipment, life cycle costs, as well as maintenance requirements. And so in order to be able to calculate all of these and integrate these into the overall cost, a project management unit has been conceptualized in the draft policy, which will have representation from all the services, which will not only facilitate the overall procurement, but will at the same time also ensure the enforcement of the contracts. Next comes support to MSMEs and startups. Like any other sector, MSMEs or startups form an important part or pillar of defense manufacturing as well. And in this regard, the draft policy proposes two important suggestions. The first is that it proposes component manufacturing by MSMEs immediately once this policy is notified. And from the reading of the draft, it makes us or leads us to believe that the government might make it mandatory for all the components production to be done under MSME sector. Then it proposes an indigenization portal, which would be quite similar to the GEM portal, where all the services are going to list out the demands or their needs, and anyone from the private sector, especially belonging to the MSME sector, will be eligible to contact the services, their project management unit, and propose their idea or the design or the manufactured products. And so it is going to go a long way in addressing the delay in procurement and acquisition process. Then in the draft policy, government has also proposed optimization of resource allocation. So for example, currently all the expenses on acquisition of capital is shown under one head. Now the government is planning to make a distinct budget head for domestic products among all the services. And the government is going to make it mandatory for that particular amount to be spent only on domestic acquisition or the products which have been domestically manufactured. Then in the draft policy, government is actively looking into promotion of investment through ease of doing business. Then in the draft policy, government also mentions of creating a narrow engine complexes, which will not only focus on manufacturing of aviation sector equipments like helicopters and jet fighter jets, but also will look into MRO capabilities, which is basically maintenance, repair and overhaul. And if you know, currently in India, there is no MRO services provided by either Boeing or Airbus. All our aircrafts have to go either to Middle East or European countries in order to get them serviced. Then what about the innovation and R&D in which India is pathetically behind? And in the draft policy, government has proposed target missions and it has specified some items only for them. The government is going to run target missions. So these are hypersonic missiles, 5th generation fighter aircraft and transport aircraft. So just like government runs very targeted schemes for, let's say, public distribution system, for enabling people to construct their own homes through RAU'S yojanas, similarly specifically targeted schemes will be run or the missions will be run to manufacture domestically these three highly advanced technologies. And in the draft policy, government specifically mentions lab to lines or concept to implementation scheme. So government is going to lay a lot of emphasis on how and why we can convert the ideas or the designs into functioning models which are effective on ground.
The next article that we have taken has found its place in the explained section of Indian Express. What is FDPR and why is the US using it to cripple China's tech sector? Now, oftentimes you must have seen questions in prelims examination framed like, recently the term FDPR has been in news. Which of the following statement best explains this term? And hence it is important for us to understand not only the meaning of FDPR but why it's being resorted to by US. So on Friday, US officials applied the rule to China's advanced computing and supercomputer industry to stop it from obtaining advanced computing chips. And so you can easily understand that FDPR, which is an acronym for Foreign Produced Direct Product, was first introduced in 1959 to control trading of US technologies with adversaries. So just like US imposes sanctions on nations which are not in good terms or at war with US, this is one of the ways through which US controls the flow of technology to the countries which it does not like or doesn't want to grow. And so according to it, if a product was made using American technology, the US government has the power to stop it from being sold, including products made in a foreign country. And so this is not the first time in recent times. Even in 2020, it was used against Chinese telecom company Huawei Technologies to cut off Huawei's supply of semiconductors. But eventually it was found out that companies were still shipping to Huawei chips made in factories outside US. Eventually, US regulators found a choke point. Almost all chip factories contain critical tools from US suppliers. So, they expanded the FDPR to control trade of chips made using US technology or tools. And so we know that one of the most advanced chips are being manufactured in Taiwan. But if any of those facilities or factories are using a machine or a computer which is built or manufactured in US, then also US Congress and Senate has the power to impose this sanction. So US regulators also used it on Russia and Belarus after the invasion of Ukraine to cut off the supply of chips. So if we talk about the advantages or merits, it might stop advanced chip used to develop nuclear weapons and other military applications, and indirectly it will help countries to boost their own innovations or indigenization of technology. When it comes to demerits, it is found that FDPR has led to increase in litigations of the US government with the companies. It creates frictions with allies who may disagree with the application of US law. Frequent application of this particular rule could also indicate that US wants to monopolize the advanced technology market. Also, this battle between US and China for supremacy over high-tech market can lead to instability and disruptions in the international market. So what are the lessons for India? The lessons for India is very clear. It must develop its own manufacturing technologies and own processor technologies so that it does not have to perpetually rely on American technology, because this rule can be any day, at any point of time, be used against India as well. And so India must invest in tapping the potential of its rare earth reserves. At the same time, India should enter into regional bilateral agreements to secure the supply of critical minerals. And at the end of the day, it must come up with dedicated policy to promote its own semiconductor industrial base. The next article for discussion has again appeared in the Indian Express. Government appoints panel to look into quotas for Dalit Christians and Muslims, and here's why. So as all of us know that a lot of provisions for affirmative action have been provided in the Constitution of India. A lot of legislative steps have already been taken to undo the historical wrongs done to the communities or people belonging to SC/ST community. The benefits of the reservation of SC/ST so far has not been extended to Christians and Muslims. And so the Balakrishnan Commission has been set up by the central government, which will be a 3-member commission to be headed by ex-CJI KG Balakrishnan, and it has been asked to submit report in 2 years. The 3-member commission will also comprise Professor Sushma Yadav, member UGC, and retired IAS officer Ravindra Kumar Jain, and has been given a 2-year deadline to submit a report on the issue starting from the day Justice Balakrishnan takes the charge of the commission. So as all of us know that under Article 341, The Constitution of India says that President may specify the castes, races or tribes or parts or groups within castes, races or tribes which shall be deemed to be scheduled caste. And so, the first constitutional order was published in 1950, which contained the list of all the castes and tribes which will be considered for reservation. But the catch was that it covered only Hindus. And so, SC/ST people belonging only to Hindu religion were covered under the reservation. But later on, following the demands from the Sikh community, an order was passed in 1956, which included Sikhs of Dalit origin among the beneficiaries of the SC quota. Whereas in 1990, the government acceded to a similar demand from Buddhists of Dalit origin, and the order was revised to state no person who professes a religion different from Hindu, Sikh, or Buddhist religion shall be deemed to be a member of scheduled caste. And so you can clearly understand that people belonging to Hindu, Sikh, and Buddhist religion and claiming themselves to be scheduled caste can get the benefit of reservation, but not SC people belonging to Christianity or Islam. Now the question is, does this religion-based bar apply to converted STs and OBCs as well? And so the answer is of course no. The Department of Personnel and Training website states that the rights of a person belonging to a scheduled tribe are independent of his or her religious faith. And so following the implementation of Mandal Commission report, several Christians and Muslim communities have found place in central as well as in state list of OBCs. If we talk about historical efforts that have been made to include Muslims and Christians of Dalit origin among SCs, after 1990s, a number of private member bills were brought in Parliament for this purpose. In 1996, a government bill called the Constitution Scheduled Caste Orders Amendment Bill was drafted, but in view of divergence of the opinion, the bill was not introduced in Parliament. The UPA government, headed by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, set up two important panels: the National Commission for Religious and Linguistic Minorities, popularly known as Rangnath Mishra Commission in October 2004, and a 7-member high-level committee headed by former Chief Justice of Delhi High Court, Rajinder Sachar, to study social, economic and educational condition of Muslims in 2005. The Sachar Commission report observed that the social economic situation of Dalit Muslims and Dalit Christians did not improve after conversion. The Rangnath Mishra Commission, which submitted its report in 2007, recommended that SC or scheduled caste status should be completely delinked from religion, and SCs should be made fully religion neutral like scheduled tribes. The report was tabled in both houses of parliament in 2009, but its recommendation was not accepted in view of inadequate field data and corroboration with the actual situation on ground. And so this is an ongoing development, and the Balkrishna committee has also been given 2 years to submit its report. So we'll have to wait for the Supreme Court's order, which might expedite the commission's recommendations. We are very confident of navigating OPEC plus supply cuts, says Hardeep Puri.
We know how oil prices have impacted all of us, and they are mainly because the group of countries which has complete monopoly over the production of crude oil has decided to cut the production. Since they are the major suppliers of crude oil, if they cut down the supply, the prices are going to be high. And this is what is happening. And so, with respect to this particular news, there are two things which you should know. The first is with respect to the group of countries, OPEC or OPEC plus. And the second is with respect to the crude oil and its compositions and different types of crude oils. For example, Brent, West Texas Intermediate, which has already been dealt with in the DNS. Now, if you look at the prelims syllabus, you would not know whether it is important or not. But just look at these two questions. Other than Venezuela, which one among the following from South America is a member of OPEC? Or for example, this question from 2016, which of the following is not a member of Gulf Cooperation Council or GCC? While the first question will be solved through this particular discussion, the answer to the second question is Iran, because Saudi Arabia, Oman and Kuwait, all three are members of GCC except or barring Iran. And so you know that organizations and groups like these are very, very important along with their memberships. So before looking at the membership, let us first understand few basics about OPEC, or Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries as they are known as, which is a permanent intergovernmental organization created at Baghdad Conference in 1960, and initially it had just the membership of Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia and Venezuela. Now the Secretariat is not located within the member countries. Everyone wants to enjoy and have a good time in Europe, and its center or its office is located in Vienna. Now, as far as objective of OPEC countries are concerned, it is basically to create a conglomerate, to create a group of countries, all of them major exporters and producers of crude oil, and to control the prices of crude oil, whatever they may write in their objectives, but the real objective is a fair return on capital to those investing in the industry. And the fair return will be obtained only when all these countries operate in unison, when they operate in unity. When all of them decide to cut the production, all of them should follow it, which will result in increase in oil prices. And that is what they have been doing since last 1 year especially. So when we talk about oil producing countries, of course we will have to start from Middle East. We have Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iraq, Kuwait, Iran and Qatar all located over here. Then we have Algeria and Libya. Then we have Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, Republic of Congo over here and Angola over here. We also have Gabon as a very small territory over there. And as far as South American countries are concerned, we have Venezuela. Earlier we had Ecuador as well, but now it is a former member along with Indonesia. So all these countries marked in blue or shaded in blue color are current existing members of OPEC. And so when this question was asked, Ecuador along with Venezuela were the members of OPEC, but no more. So if the question is asked right now, it will be reformulated, but when the question was asked in 2010, the answer was Ecuador. Let us now move on to the next news.